Okay, hi, my name is Klaus Wittkuhn. I'm running two companies in Germany. One of them is a training company which focuses on, let's say, performance-based training. We try to come up with a different training approach, and the second company focuses on performance consulting, like in a usual consulting company. I first got involved in HPT probably 12 years ago, and this was when customers started asking us in the training business, does this pay off what we do here? And then we thought we probably should get an answer, and I tried to look around to find something, and the first thing I did was I attended an ASTD conference and accidentally ran into one of the Robinson's workshops. So this gave me a first idea, and I thought, yes, the central idea is clever, and it pointed my way to ISPI. So, you know, once I went to the literature, then I found ISPI, and ever since I didn't attend ASTD conferences anymore, then I went to ISPI, because, I mean, this is the better place to learn about it. My greatest HPT influence, for sure, is Gary Rumler. He taught me most about how to understand organizations. And even though, meanwhile, I have lots of experience, I think, in doing this job, from time to time, I go back to his books, especially the first one, and use it as a reference, like to refresh my memory, you know, and to make sure that you do not forget things. So by far, this was my biggest influence, my greatest influence. An interesting application of HPT is we once did a project for a big IT company. They provide company software, big packages, and together with those software packages, they have to deliver training programs for the people. And what they had is they had several departments all over Germany which were responsible to invoice, you know, and they constantly had a backlog in those invoices which was more than 1 million, which means they lost money all the time. But what management could see is some of those people working on those invoices, you know, had piles of work on their desk. So this was the backlog, and other ones had a clean desk. So the assumption was, obviously this job can be done. One part of the people is smarter and they know how to organize themselves. So somebody should come in and teach the other part of the people how to organize themselves. So basically they asked for some kind of time management course or something like that. But this was the result they had in mind was people should learn how to organize themselves. But the real result, what they wanted to achieve was we have to get rid of this backlog, you know, because we are losing money. And then because we didn't trust their, let's say, their analysis, we asked whether we could look and find out what is going on. And I like this story so much because one of the reasons for this backlog was a very small issue, very deeply hidden in the, let's say, in the work process, and somehow luckily we found it. So it's a quite a good example of how consulting sometimes is connected with luck also. Because it turned out to be that way that the orders came in to those apartments, so they knew what was ordered, and then they had to organize the training programs also. But to do this, they had to coordinate with technicians, you know, for the technical equipment in those courses, and if they ran too many courses, they had to buy the technical equipment from external providers, and the same was true for rooms. The number of participants was important. So finally, when they had to write the invoices, they had to get all this information. But all those departments, once the courses were done, you know, had the feeling we did our job. Anything else is not important anymore, and therefore they constantly had to ask for this information. And then what some of the people did was they were so pissed off that they filled in information into those invoicing sheets, which basically was not correct. It was not based on the data they got. It was based on, we know what we sold, so roughly it should be this. You couldn't send out those invoices if you didn't fill in the data completely, you know. So the ones who did a correct job waited for the data. The other ones simply filled in what they thought, sent those invoices out, and the result was, because it was roughly correct, some companies didn't realize it, but others then complained because they said, this is not correct, which means the people which, out of a management perspective, looked as those are the high performers because they do not have any backlog. They added to the problem because those invoices came back. The only thing was, although they had a sophisticated template, the template did not have a field where those people had to fill in their initials. So nobody knew who sent out this invoice. I mean, you finally can find it, but nobody really followed up. And then this meant the invoices came back, and they came back to any of those desks, and then other people had to take care of it. So this was one of the major reasons. Like making a small change in this template already changed their behavior quickly, and then the backlog went down. Obviously, there were process problems connected with it also, and service level agreements with all those other departments. So this is not the whole story, but I think this is the funniest and the most, let's say, the most interesting aspect of this whole story. And then finally, I mean, you easily could see that this worked successfully because, I mean, to control backlog, to track backlog is quite easy to do. An HPT term I'd like to define is, I would say I'd like to define it as PT because I constantly try to argue that it doesn't make sense to put the H in this performance technology definition because in an organization, I think human performance is important and is part of the overall performance, but it's not all, and we shouldn't focus on this part alone. This is one thing, and then the other side of it, if you take it as PT, like performance technology, I would say it's kind of a body of knowledge being translated into tools which you can teach, like a craft. You can teach it like a craft, and you try to make sure that what you teach is on one side, let's say, based on science, as long as you work in a known area, but in consulting you have to do new things also, so you develop new things, and then you try to take care of not to do things which contradict what science already told us. But you won't have any proof on this side because you simply do new things. So it comes back to, it's kind of a body of knowledge you can teach.